I will be discussing Panofsky, then Coster, then Harbison, then Carroll. I think that Panofsky is very good for what he did. He did many good things. He started off finding, really being the first one to piece together what the Arnolfini portrait is and where it came from, right? I mean, before him, no one knew. No one knew who was what, who Fido was, right? I mean, he did a lot there. But his actual ideas, especially the idea of iconography, is very iffy. Only because that's not how paintings work, right? I mean, we can look at a painting and say, this symbol must be this thing. But I don't think that's particularly true. I think his use of iconography as idea of like a religious puzzle to solve that, every meaning has only one thing. And later he argues about weddings, right? This is a wedding because and despite the fact it looks nothing like a wedding, just because of stylistic reasons, right? They're not crossed over because he thought it would look better, or her hair is he didn't even mention the hair being up and instead down, right? All these things lead to Panofsky just being iffy, right? And I think he's very similar to Carroll, to Coster, which we'll discuss soon. I think his ideas are similar to Carroll, despite Carroll very much Despite Coster very much disagreeing with what Panofsky thought, she does many of the similar pitfalls that Panofsky does. Specifically, for Panofsky, I'd like to mention things like how he mentions Fido, the dog, being fidelity, right? And which is not really true. Look, here's a dog right here. Right here is many symbols he claims are specifically religious or only have one meaning, just don't. Right? I mean, these paintings have many of the same symbols. The oranges, the dog. I mean, we see here, right, the bed, the chandelier. That doesn't it doesn't track that this has to mean one thing. Later, and then Coster, despite being the last, is very similar to Panofsky because she also is the only one to make a specific claim with the fact that she's dead. The wife's dead, right? The wife died. She's the first one to figure this out because she's the first art historian that we discuss that had access to that letter, and that letter changes it all, right? It means that the wife that we thought was alive is dead, which changes the whole meaning, right? She claims that the lit candle and the unlit candle represents death and life, and that the bedding represents the fact that she died in childbirth, and I don't think it's accurate because of this painting. This painting has many of the almost identical iconography to the to the Arnolfini portrait, but it's not that at all, right? So it's hard to argue that these things must represent that. Harbison's major claim that symbols cannot have direct one-to-one meanings. Symbols don't mean one thing. And I personally much agree with Harbison. He also mentions things like how the oranges and the dog can represent wealth, and that the dog itself is ironic because they were cheaters, right? So he uses these multi-valued lenses, the lens of viewing this art history, that the dog can represent fidelity, but the dog also represents the disconnect they have between the fidelity they have and how their actions. Or these oranges could be the fruit of God, or they could be how wealthy they are, right? We see with like similar things what Van Eyck does, right? Van Eyck made this wrinkly painting, but and the red turban, right? These symbols could just mean I can draw wrinkles very well. I can draw this complex turban, or it could be I'm a philosopher. I'm like the Greeks, and I'm wise. I'm old. You can trust me. These meaning meanings, especially in Van Eyck's paintings, like this one, can be multi-layered. And I think Carroll is the perfect synthesis of the historicity of Panofsky and the multi ideas of Harbison because her arguments also include that things mean multiple things, right? She specifically mentions the oranges, right? The oranges in this context represent the fruits of business because there is a common analogy in medieval times that the fruit that the that oranges that fruits that usury is the idea is like prostitution. It's not. It's so you get it done and it's over with. But a good trade deal is like giving birth to a child. like fruits bearing from a tree. We see, and in general, I think, and her other argument is that the symbols he's using, which Panofsky also mentions, of being religious, right? He does the hand thing. Like he does the hand thing. Their hands show agreement. I do agree. But these it's a religious symbolism, not because there's some hidden religious meaning, but because this is trying to show people that he is a trustworthy person and a pious man. People, traders especially, had a very big fear of being mistrusted because they were close to usurers, right? And there was a fine line between doing good business, moral and immoral business. So the painting uses the symbols in the painting to show that he is a good man, to show that he is a fair business partner, and to show that he and to show he's rich, right? This dog, in the end, isn't showing fidelity. Probably, it's not showing that this dog that leads you away to death. What the dog is showing you is that they're wealthy. The dog, the symbols have more than one meaning, but Panofsky and Koster over exaggerate one meaning despite the fact that other interpretations could exist.